Okay, so thank you for coming. Now, if you just come here for the exercise, this is the end of class. But I promise that I will start to talk about a little bit about the Buddhist training. I think this is the time when we will need to protect ourselves with all the tools that are available, so we don't become, we don't engross in what's going on outside. The world is chaotic enough. And I like to think that this is a sanctuary for us. I like to think that this is a sanctuary for us. And by the way, if you work for the, I don't know if I should say that. You know who you are. You come to the wrong class. This is not for you. This is for those who cares about freedom, cares about joy, loving kindness, and compassion. And this is the sanctuary for us. This is the time that we need to get together. Now, in the past, in the beginning of the class, in the very beginning, maybe 4 years ago, I talked about what I wanted to do, what I wanted to achieve. And this is back in the days where we focused mainly on the exercise. And I said that I like to use this exercise routine to get us to discover our existence. That our existence is multidimensional, that it's not just the physical existence, that our existence is beyond the physicality. And I talk about how our existence consists of chi, energy, and then consists of a mind. And I mentioned how the North Indians, the yogis, they think of our existence in this very interesting, complex way, like the Russian Tao, one inside another. And the very outside is what they call the food body. That's the banana you ate this morning. That is the food body. This is the body that you got when you were born, and you're going to give it back when you die. Not a single cell can you retain. The inside of that is what they call the mind, the thinking mind. And then inside of that is their energy. And they, instead of chi, they talk about nadi. And they think that the energy is actually from the universe. There's 72,000 nadis. And the intercept of those nadis form the chakra. And there's more than 7. There's actually 114, I believe. And then inside, there's more and more. Now, Buddha, the historical Buddha, by the way, his name after he became enlightened, his name is Sikamori. Sikamori is an interesting name because Sika is his family name. It means wisdom. Mori is the name that he's given himself as a Dharma name, and it means compassion. So when I talk about Shambhala warriors, when I talk about how we have to face the future with compassion and wisdom, we are really talking about Sikamori. But in any case, he was a prince, as you know. He lived about 600 years before Christ, before the birth of Christ. And he decided that he wants to be a monk, or at least a yogi. And he has a little bit different interpretation of our existence. Very similar to the original way of thinking it in these 5 layers, one on top of each other. He talks about our existence in terms of the 5 chakras. I'm sorry, 5 skandhas. Now I'm going to put all that in the class notes. So every week there will be a set of class notes that I put on Facebook as well as Patreon. And so these are called skandhas. Skandhas are kind of like, I like to think of it as like 5 funnels, right? One after another and another. And the 5 skandhas consist of form, which is everything physical about us, including our environment. So our eyes, our nose, our tongue, our ears, our body, and our brain is all in this one skandha called the form, the physical. But it also consists of what's outside. So in a way, you can think of it as a funnel that takes the physics into our physiology. So the physics are like the light, the smell, the taste, the sound, the touch, and so forth. And that's called a form. describes everything physical about us. The other 4 is what describes what's metaphysical about us, beyond the physics. So the next one, there's different translations. I like sensation. Some people call it feeling. I don't like the word feeling because feeling means that we assign value. This is just sensation. This is what I said. This is just how the body reacts to the environment. And so if you think of it as neurology, it's really how the eye senses light, creates electricity, and all the nerve endings goes to the spiral cord, not to the brain. This is interesting. That's why I said our intellectual system is way beyond just our intellect. So this next form, again, is a funnel taking what the body creates, which is electric signal, and then concentrate it into our spines. This is called sensation. So at this moment, it doesn't make any difference whether you're looking at a tabletop that's brown or ice cream, chocolate ice cream that's brown. Brown is brown. Eye sees brown. That's it. Now the next standards, another funnel, is called perception. This is when all the electrical signal got collected, go through the spiral cord up into the brain. And the brain says, oh, that's ice cream. No, that's tabletop, whatever. Right? So that's called the sensation. And finally, the brain creates something called a mental factor. This is where you say, I like, I don't like. And that's called volition. Now there's one thing that is difficult. So far we're talking about what a Western sciences will tell you. The last part is a little beyond the modern science. It's called consciousness. This is the one where you take your like and dislike and leave in a history, leave an imprint. It's called karma. Now the problem with karma is that people misinterpret that and say, oh, that's karma, like as if there's something that is fixed, cannot be changed. The reason they do that is it's a tool for oppression. Because in the old days, or maybe even today, there's a lawsuit going on in the Bay Area between the Indians. They're suing each other because of the caste. 1,000-year-old system of oppression still exists today within our technology sector. Indians came here, work as engineer, and they discriminate between castes. And this is what happens in North India because the oppression, the class, the oppressed are Aryans. They actually came way north during the last ice age, and the Aborigines are the lower caste. They're the slave, and so in order to impose that, they have this concept called karma. This is it. You were born with it. Turns out in China, the same thing. The emperors say, well, that's karma. What are you going to do? Well, the historical Buddha, Sikamori, was the one that says, no, karma can be changed. That's revolutionary. But it's important to understand that karma is a record of your mental state, not your physical action, but your mental state. Even when you think it, there's a karma. I think of it as growing tomato. I have a field, I have tomato. I have to buy some seed. Oh, I go and buy some really good seeds. I grow really nice potato. Someone comes in here and disturb my field, and all of a sudden my tomato becomes bitter. So you say, well, I ate the tomato, nothing happened. No, there's seeds left. And then from now on, your field is full of bitter tomato. That's karma. But it can be changed. That's the point. If it cannot be changed, there's no point of any spiritual practice. We can change our life by understanding how our existence works. Now let's come back, talk about the mental factors. This is how a brain works. When a brain senses something, it says, I like, I don't like. Buddha really analyzed that and it says there's 51 mental factors. the simplest way to think about it is that there are mental factors that are virtuous, and then there are mental factors that are non-virtuous. That's the easiest way to think about it. Remember last week I talked about this story, old Native American story about the grandfather, the chief, talks to his grandson, and he says, you know, there are two wolves within us, right? One is about hate, and one is about compassion. Remember that? Well, in a way, those are the mental factors. So let me bring that up and see if I could repeat that. And so the grandfather said to the grandson, he says, one wolf is evil. It represents anger, jealousy, greed, resentment, inferiority, lies, and ego. The other one's good. It represents joy, peace, love, hope, humility, kindness, empathy, and truth. Now, the difference is, in Buddhism, we don't use the word evil and good, because evil and good requires judging. We don't judge. Instead, what we use is kusala and akusala. Kusala is virtuous, is what's good for you. Good for your eternal life. Akusala is non-virtuous, is what's bad for you. You choose. You choose. One lead you to light, one lead you to darkness. So if you understand, if you look at the 51 mental factors, it turns out the virtuous factors are very few. They're very few. That's why we need each other. The virtuous states, what I call kusala states, are faith, dignity, propriety, non-attachment, non-aggression, not delusion, diligence, I don't understand that word, penancy, consciousness, equanimity, and non-violence, and that's it. The destructive emotions, the non-virtuous, the akusala, start with ignorance, desire, anger, pride, doubt, and his own twisted beliefs. And it goes on. Rage, resentment, spitefulness, cruelty, envy, deception, pretension, lack of shame, disregard, concealment, miserliness, self-satisfaction, lack of faith, laziness, carelessness, forgetfulness, inattention, lethargy, excitement, and distraction. And the list goes on. So let's stop here. Let's stop here and understand that our mind works the way it works. We're fully capable of both virtuous and non-virtuous mental factors. And we react to them. But it's a choice. We can choose one side versus the other. One side leads you to light, and one side leads you to darkness. Before I finish, I'm going to tell a story. It's a very good story. I tell it many times. Back in the days when Sycamore was just a yogi, he traveled for 6 years, practiced yoga, spiritual yoga. Eventually decided that he needed something else. And so he sat down on the Bodhi tree and he meditated. And in fact, the very technique that led him to enlightenment is the one we practice in the beginning, called the mindfulness of feeling. He scans his body, he feels it, he accepts it, and he let it go. That was his technique. But in any case, after he became enlightened, he decided to come back to visit his family because he escaped from his family. And when he came back, the day he came back, his nephew was born. His nephew's name was Ananda. And when Ananda grew old enough, he decided to follow Sycamore and become his attendant. Now, usually when you become a monk's attendant, you are a novice. A monk is called Bhikkhu, and a novice is called Same. So usually, after a few years, the master would say, you got to go. It's time for you to become a monk and a bhikkhu, and you got to go and do your thing. Ananda decided that he didn't want to do that. He wanted to follow Buddha. So he was actually 45 years old. He was the oldest Same. He was until Buddha passed away 45 years later. But in any case, they become traveling partners, traveling companions all the time. And another thing was that he wanted to follow Buddha so he can record everything he said. That's why in the beginning of every sutra, there's something called "Thus I record," "Thus I heard." And so in my channel, I play with that and I call it "Thus I record," right? So one day they were walking by a tree, a banyan tree. So Buddha says to Ananda, do you know the story of this tree? Now, do you know, if you ever seen a banyan tree is a big tree trunk, sometimes hollow inside. I grew up with that. In Macau, we have plenty of those. And then it has a lot of sort of thing hanging down to breathe. You see them. And he says, do you know the story about the banyan tree? And another says, Master, no, I don't, but I will record it. So the master says, well, there was once upon a tree, and for some reason a non-virtuous seed fall next to it. A non-virtuous seed fall next to it. And we're talking about the non-virtuous mental factors now. A non-virtuous seed fall next to it. It starts to grow. And as it grows, it entangles the regular tree. It consumes the original tree for nutrient to the point where the original tree die and disappear. And that's why the tree is hollow. He says, that's what happened to us. That once you let that non-virtuous thoughts continues, it consumes who we are. And we can no longer recognize our true existence. I like to think that all of us here are not completely entangled by a non-virtuous thought, that we still have plenty of compassion and loving kindness and empathy and equanimity within us. That's why this is a sanctuary for us. Namaste. See you all next week.